So there's like you mentioned before, there's so many different issues that we have to tackle, but also levers that we can pull, right? So we have
There's so many reasons to be optimistic. I'm so optimistic even in these crazy times.
No, you should be. You 100% should be. Like you can see all the pieces when you see like a VC firm that's self-aware, when you see community groups that remove social stigmas that can impede your performance, when you talk about all these founders that have been exceptionally successful, even though they only represent 6% of 3%. Like there's obviously a lot of positive points. However, it's not where it should be in 2022. So how do we move like a little bit quicker? How do we get towards equity? Maybe not in the next 50 years, right?
Oh gosh, I hope in the next 50 years. Come on, I hope things speed up.
I'm being honest. I'm saying, how do we get it moving quicker, right? Like we thought that we'd be further along in 2022.
I am optimistic that the business world will move towards equity and become more diverse, both in terms of gender and in terms of race, and in terms of ability and in terms of everything, because there are so many studies showing that diversity is better for business. Mm-hmm. It's better for product development. It's better for understanding your customers. It's better for management. I mean, there are all these stories about diverse management teams have better retention. They are more empathetic. So I could go on and on about all the academic studies, but I think I think that's why there's reason to be optimistic. And then there's just this day-to-day thing, like how are we all supposed to navigate the world, especially if anyone feels like they're facing bias or they're facing stereotypes or there's a ceiling of how far people like them have gone in their organization. And I think that's sort of the day-to-day. Like big picture, yes, we can be optimistic, but we all have to get up and go to work the next day. And when I was writing the chapter on how people are judged more, women and people of color are judged more harshly, I was really depressed by the data. This is the chapter I actually wrote last because I was so dreading getting dragged down by the negativity of all the ways women are judged more harshly. Women are judged more harshly if they use humor in the workforce. Women are judged more harshly if they use anger. If they give feedback to their employees that's critical, they're judged more harshly. I mean, it's like a laundry list. And I was losing my mind reading this data. But I found a way to make it practical and constructive. And it was this. I realized that if you understand what you're up against and you understand what these challenges are that actually have nothing to do with you and your performance, you can navigate around them. There was a woman I interviewed named Aya Badir, and she founded a kids tech company called Little Bits, which she then sold. And she's Lebanese, and she's a female founder. And when she was raising money, she said she faced the craziest kind of stereotypes and bias. And we've got the rudest questions. And she was telling me about some of these comments she heard. I was like, gosh, how did you not get so discouraged that you gave up?
What did she deal with? Like, give us an example.
Just people would make rude comments to her. There were some women I interviewed. One of them said she was an Indian immigrant, and someone asked her, like, when are you going to hire a white male co-founder? Like, you're obviously not going to do this your own. Like, no one's going to ever let you run a company unless you hire a white man to go with you. Like, just things like that just are so discouraging.
That's really messed up, actually, that somebody would say that.
Kind of like happens all the time. It happens all the time. And so I just wanted to know, like, I might have given up after that. I don't know how you keep going. And I got this interesting message from a number of women. And what they said is once you identify that this bias is like not about you, you just like figure out how to go around it. So Aya Badir said, I thought of it like remembering to bring a jacket when it's cold out. You know it's going to be cold. You know you're going to be uncomfortable. But if you prepare yourself, you put on the armor of a jacket, you just don't let it bother you. Mm-hmm. So she said, I would go into the meetings. I would listen to the feedback. Some of the comments would be constructive and things that could make my company better. And some would be rude and useless. And if I could figure out how to separate the ones that were rude and useless, then I could actually learn and get value from the ones that were constructive. And then I wouldn't let the negative stuff get me down. And I think there's this idea of once you have, and I put it this way in this book, like once you can understand the contours of something that's going to be like an impediment to your growth, you can better figure out your way around it. And so that's something I like to think about a lot. Like, okay, maybe I can't change this thing. Like I used to say like, oh my God, I don't want to hear about it if I can't control it. If I can't change it, like I'm not even going to waste my time on it. But actually it's good to know what the challenges are. Maybe it's good to know, do research and find out if your company what the pay gap is in your company. That's valuable research. Maybe that'll empower you to negotiate for more. I just think that, again, data, but also using data to not be brought down by something that's challenging and to help forge your own path to success.
Another option, that's sort of more of a career-focused option, but if you're looking to raise money, you may, I guess, research the fund or the firm and see who else they've invested in. I mean, you can
find out what other, if you have to be raising money, what firms have invested in. And then you can get information from organizations like All Raise or hashtag Angels to make sure you're not giving away too much of your company at a lower, getting less for it. So it's interesting because it shows that women hold fewer shares of startups, even that they've founded. And that means that they're not negotiating for as much, so it's like a better deal when they're getting those investment checks. And part of that is just a lack of transparency. If everyone has more data about how things work, how much people are likely to get paid, then you're going to have things end up more fair and more equitable. There are some companies that are starting to be very clear about what their salary ranges are. And especially for entry-level jobs, why let people negotiate and have the people who don't bother negotiate get paid much less? They're saying this is our starting level paid check, and this is what it's going to be. And so later we'll promote you based on performance, but they create these very clear systems to strip out any bias. And there are some amazing companies such as PayPal and Salesforce that have really led the way on using data to eliminate bias from hiring and promotion.
I think that to your point before, like I also agree that it's not going to be another 50 years. I think a flywheel has started, and I think that the more data, the more exposure that we have, the better people will be. But it's about educating them and also getting people to also help themselves. I think that's a big piece of it. So it's not always rainbows and unicorns when you go into these situations, because we're not 100% perfect. Like businesses are not 100% perfect. So like you said, you arm yourself. You arm yourself.
Yeah, you arm yourself. You put on the jacket. Figure out what you need to have the jacket that's going to protect you from the situation. But you earlier in the conversation, you mentioned these women who are so exceptional. How did they get the 3% of VC dollars? And when I started this project, I was like, you know what? I'm going to find that these women just came out of the womb more one thing or another. They came out of the womb more empathetic or more insightful or better at managing people. I just thought this is going to be a born trait, right? That I'm not a leader, but there must be these ingrained traits that some people are more likely to have. And the thing that was true across the board is that none of these traits are born. All of these things are developed, and the most successful leaders are the ones that fail and learn from their success and get better and figure out what traits they want to develop and build in themselves. Karen Seidman Becker may have been more likely to be overprepared from the time she was a kid. She talked about how, her grandfather had escaped the Holocaust. And so she always had this idea of like belts and suspenders, always be prepared. So maybe that was like a familial thing that was in her head, but she also had all these successes and failures along the way. She watched what happened with 9/11, and that got her thinking about airplane safety. She watched what happened with the 2008, 2009 financial crash, and she lost a lot of money for her clients then, and she learned from it. So there's amazing data about how people who do sports, like serious sports in high school and college, are more likely to be leaders. That is true of men and women. I'm not an athlete. I was not an athlete in high school or college, but I was really interested in this data. Why is that? Do I have to go into a time machine and have been an athlete in high school to benefit from from that statistic? And of course, that's not possible, unfortunately. But what I found is there's actually this thing about athletes that is really wildly portable. And that's this. Athletes study their failures. When you get off the field, you say, what went wrong? There is this amazing woman in the book named Christine Hunziker. She runs a tech company in the retail space called Castle. And she said, after any work situation, anything, any negotiation, anything, they do a sort of a post-event analysis. They don't call it post-mortems. She's like, nobody died. We don't have to make this negative. Let's just analyze what happened. And she was a very serious athlete. Like in high school, she did all the sports. She played field hockey and in college and rugby. She was an amazing athlete. And she said, you just have to analyze everything. And what she taught me about the value of athletics is that it's all about measuring yourself against your own benchmarks. I think about athletics as like people competing against each other, but in business and in life, that is not what you want to do. You want to say, I need, as an athlete, and Christine did this, I need to push myself to be my best version of myself. I'm not going to be a good teammate and we're not going to win unless I do my part and figure out where I'm now and where I want to go. So none of these women came out as amazing leaders. No one ever does, but it's about figuring out your starting point and then creating benchmarks to create a path to success. That's something we can all do.